Hello, Natroners, and welcome back to another episode of VFX with Natron. So, today we're going to be looking at the ROD versus the output format, or the project format, as people often refer to it as. And what the two differences, or what the two are, and what is the difference, because one of the things that has happened on more than one occasion, in fact, it just happened this week, was somebody brought in a video that came in the wrong angle. In other words, if you were to say film something that was supposed to be horizontal, and it ended up importing into Natron vertically, it would shift things around. Or likewise, if you recorded something vertically and you import it into Natron, it sometimes imports horizontally. So we're going to, I don't know, I didn't have a chance to test out this, whether this is going to import correctly, but we're going to just pop over into Natron, and we're going to throw a video in here, and let's see, I think I'm going to just throw kittens wrestling on me feet. You're saying, what? What pirate Bill? Wait a minute. And there we go. Here's a prime example of, yes, I know, I'm being evil. I'm using kittens in me videos. Yes, that's right. I've got new crew. I mentioned it in Facebook many months ago, or not many months ago, about a month ago, that maybe a month and a half ago, that we got some new crew in my household. They ain't allowed in here because they have a chewing habit, and I will chew on everything in here. And there's way too many things in here that I don't want them chewing on. Pirate stuff. Anyway, so here is some kittens, and we can see this is a vertical. This was video was shot vertically. Now, I didn't personally shoot this video because those are me feet. Well, sort of. Anyway, and these kittens is roughhousing around me. Well, we can just, let's look at what we got here. We're gonna just go through it because, my gum, it's cute little kittens playing with feet and roughhousing and having a good time. But we can see that's not right. We got the kittens is that way, and we want them this way, and probably we want to recompose this entire thing. But let's say we didn't want to recompose this. So let's say we were uploading this to Instagram or something along those lines. We need to be able to rotate this. Well, the first instinct that most people go but with is they sit there and they do this. They pop, they hit, oh, well, I'm going to just chuck in a transform node, and then I'm going to rotate it. I think it's 90 degrees or negative 90. I think it's 90 in this case. Nope, we did it wrong. It's negative 90. So there we go, negative 90, and there we go. We've got it. It looks, it's there, well, sort of, but it's cropped off the top of and the bottom of the video, and it doesn't really match. So now, if we were to put this anywhere, it would be, we would have a centered video that is black borders on the edges, which some people might prefer. We could, if you wanted to, you could fix this by just scaling it down. That's one way of potentially getting it to fit. But let's say you didn't want it to. Let's say you want to present it in its original resolution, and you didn't, but it's set up like this. Well, the first thing that you could do is you could create you could hit S and pull up your project properties, and you could go in here and you could change your project format to a new format. And this has actually been something I've recommended people doing, is creating a new format, because we don't actually have one here for vertical video by default. So we could say, here, let's just do that. Let's create a vertical video one. The problem with this, and I'm going to tell you right now, I've done this in the past. The problem is when you update your Natron to a new version, a lot of times these particular files just disappear. They don't carry over to the new versions a lot of times, because it's saved locally, especially if you're using a portable version of Natron. So this isn't, well, that you can do this. It means every time you want to make it, you have to sit here and you got to go say, okay, I want this to be 1080. Whoops. No, we want 1080 by height of 1920. All right. And there we go. And we need to give it a name. And so we're going to call it vertical HD 90. Whoops. It should be 1080 by 1920. All right. And so, and then we'll say that's it. We could copy it from the viewer if the viewer was already set, but as you can see, the viewer isn't set, and so that makes a lot of people scratch their head and say, well, why would I need to do this if I was using the viewer? Well, let's just first show that this is the way we could do it. So we do this, and then we go down here and we can see it. It's at the bottom of our list, and we select it, and we can see that it says, so that's weird. Okay, we said it was 1080 by 1920. Let me just see. It says 1080 by 1920. It should be doing that. You would think. Why isn't it working? That's really weird. I'm going to chalk this up to the fact that I'm still using the pre-release, or what do they call it? Uh-oh, I'm realizing this is not centered on the screen. Let's set this to, there we go, OBS capture, so you guys don't have anything trimmed off on the sides. But this hasn't actually updated. This means we've got a problem. This technique apparently is not going to work in this particular version, but again, this is a pre-release. This is not an official, downloadable version with all the bugs squashed and everything. So that's part of the problem. So that's obviously not functioning in our needs. We'll also see that our format has changed. So how could we fix this? How can we fix this easily? Let's first of all rotate our video back. So the next thought is obviously use a reformat node. Well, all right, that's actually the best way. Reformat, and we do reformat, and we sit there, and there we go. We've reformatted it, and now it's reformatted, and it looks like it's taken the project. In this case, it says to the project format. Well, the project we set, and so it's reset it, and now it's actually accepted those project settings, which is a bit weird. But let's see if switching the project format back, indeed, that sets it back and everything works right. So using that sort of fixed it, but we had to use a reformat node. So had the reformat node set to whatever our project default is, and we can see that our video, even though it's scaled correctly, is not actually fitting in this correctly. And what we need to do is basically the reason it actually doesn't make sense at this point. It should have fit to this, but it hasn't. So why hasn't it? Well, let's try and say, let's fit it to the output. Nope, that's not working. Okay, that doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense why that's not working. We had told it we wanted to center it. We'll try preserving the bounding box. Let's use this source ROD. There we go. We took that source ROD and said to fit it, and let's see. And honestly, any of these should work if it matches. So there we go. All we got to do is to tell it to use the source ROD, pull it in, and it fixes it. Why you have to tell it to use the source ROD in this case when it should be the same? So it shouldn't be scaled in the first place because the scale didn't change. Anyway, there's the simplest. This is probably the simplest way to get it. But there are other ways of doing this. There are many ways of doing this, and I like to explore them. Well, I like to explore a lot of them for people to help people out, because there's situations where what happens if you want to change it and you're in the middle of a project and you pull in a new animation or something like this video, which has changed our timeline, by the way, if you haven't noticed. It's changed our timeline. We're no longer doing a 250 frame animation. We're doing a 470 frame animation because our video is 470 frames. Well, that's because when we pulled this video in, nothing had existed. In fact, it really doesn't matter. When you pull anything in, the very first video you put into Natron will reformat a lot of things. It will change your default project format. It will change your default timeline frame count. I think there might be a preference. I haven't really looked for this, We'll just look quickly in the preferences, see if there's a way to disable it. I'm not positive there is. Check for updates. You can do all kinds of things. We're doing this off the top of my head because I've been busy with pussycats and other things. Anyway, shortcuts, color management, caching. Yeah, we're not going to look through this too much. Anyway, I'm not seeing it off the top of my head, so I'm not going to worry. You may be able to change it. I'll try and find out the answer for that maybe in the next video, or I'll post it in the comments or something. But let's say this wasn't what we had. Let's say we didn't start with that. Okay. How can we change this? By the way, you'll notice that the reformat node, the second we set it here and we have use source ROG and we have it set like this, it's not actually, you can see that it didn't actually, unless we set it to, if we say width or height, it didn't actually work necessarily. Okay, maybe it does work. Hold on. There we go. If we say use the source ROD and there is no source, we wind up with an ROD size of 00. And you wind up, yeah, won't fit, it won't do diddly. So anyway, you want to uncheck that and then just change this to something. And that should fix it. Anyway, so let's go back to the project format. Let's reset our project format to HD and talk about this. What if we didn't want to use, if we weren't starting with a reformat node? Do we always have to use the reformat node? Well, the answer is no. You don't actually always have to use the reformat node. The reformat node is designed so that you can take, you need to understand also that there's a thing called the root branch, and then there's layer branches. Okay, the root branch or the base branch is the branch or is your primary branch of your project, of your comp that's coming down. And so when we think about this, this is when you're doing merge nodes, the B input is the base or the root, or the, it's the primary branch. Things coming in on the A branch don't necessarily or won't modify it if they're reformatted to fit another format. Why is that? Well, because they're being composited over, or expected to be composited over it, so you don't really want that. And let's prove that in this case. Let's create something, and we're going to actually, let's modify it. We're starting off with a HD. Let's create something that actually, whoops, we don't reformat. Actually, let's just let's right click, and if we go to images, image formats are almost all of them create one of the key things I've said in the past. The big difference between images and draw nodes is images create an ROD by default, whereas draw nodes don't have to. Some can, but they don't have to. So it's very weird, and they don't always, and a draw node won't comply to usually the project default. So we could do all these, but usually the ones that people are most likely going to be using in the image nodes are going to be these three right here: the constant, the read, and the solid. The read is obviously what when you pull a file in, but we're going to start with a constant, because a constant is obviously a source image or a source. It's basically a source blank image with alpha channel versus a solid, which is a source blank image without an alpha channel. And a lot of people will get confused between that, but we've dealt with that in the past, but really haven't gone over it. So we can see we have an alpha channel here with this. We can see this thing here called extent. And what is extent? Well, extent is our bounding box of this. And by default, when you say it's default, what that means is the default is to use the project settings. So in other words, when this doesn't have something providing a source, and by the way, you should know the difference. Default, if you have something going into the source, it will take it from the source. If there's nothing going into the source, then it will default to the project format. All right, so that's one of the key things by leaving it on default. However, we can change this, so we can actually change it from default so that it always derives it from a format. So we can sit here and we say, oh, look at this. Here's all our project formats. And we can say vertical video. Look at that. We made our vertical video. There it is. And you'll notice that our ROD has automatically adjusted to match this. Why? Because this is our foundation. This is our base image or our base object that has come in. Now, let's take that kitten video that we had on the mouse ago and drop this back in here. And we put that in here, and we can see that it hasn't overridden. Okay, this is we look at that. All right, so it doesn't override anymore. There was a long time where when you pulled in something, it did. Well, I don't know if this is just retained what it was. Well, we can't really test it without restart Natron, and I don't feel like doing that. But anyway, we can see when we switch between these two, whatever goes directly to the viewer by default switches our project settings to match it by default, or at least for right now. We are looking at this in this format. But are we really? Is this actually going to render out in this format? I question whether it really will. Let's look at our project settings. Our project settings say that it's HD. This is a question that we need to ask ourselves. All right, let's try rendering it. Let's write this. Let's change our format to let's first of all reduce this in frame time. We're going to just do 25 frames. Oops. Let's do S. Excuse me, go over here. We've set the end so that it's 25 frames. We're going to set the project so that it's 25 frames. Now, the project is set by default here, okay? And our ROD, but our ROD, or what our project is set to here, is not that, right? So which one is it going to do? Is it going to basically use the project settings and overwrite that, or is it going to take it from our initial object and use that as the base? Well, let's find out. Let's try this. I actually am not 100% sure anymore. Let's hit file and go to. I just want to make sure I'm on my root output where we'll just do. Let's just do a test. We're going to do, not text, test ROD, or ROD. All right, let's see if this works. And we're going to change it from, I'm not going to do a series of AXRs, that's ridiculous. We'll tell it to do a MP4, because, or no, let's do an out. Yeah, no, we'll do an MP4. I don't want to, work. All right, so we have this. It's only going to be 25 frames. We're going to render it. Let's make sure that we render this correctly. Currently, this is blank. It's MP4, which means that it's going to be, we should give it an alpha of 1, because it's MP4 does not have alpha channel by default. So it's going to ignore, it will, if we have a blank alpha channel, it's going to render black. We want to just give it something, let's merge something over this just to make it so that we actually have something. In fact, let's merge a little bit of our kittens in here. Let's put a merge. Whoops, we wanted to merge the base. Let's hit period here so that we don't have to do too much here. Let's put this like that. Let's merge the kittens over it. The two different formats. One is 24. One is the other different. One is 30. Well, that's all right. We don't care. It just means it's not going to render correctly. You can see that the kittens are not lined up properly. The kittens are down at the bottom. All right, if this renders correctly, we either will wind up with this shape or we'll wind up with something that doesn't line up. Well, let's find out. Let's render this. I'm going to, well, this is rendering. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to open the output, my outputs, and I'm going to pull it up once it's done rendering. We're going to just drag it back into Natron and take a look at it. All right, so there it is. I'm going to plop test ROD over here. And lo and behold, look at that. That didn't work. That means that our project did not actually accept our ROD that's been redefined, which means we do actually have to create an ROD. All right. So our ROD did not transform with it, which really stinks. All right. Or did it? Is the reason that it didn't change because we went through the bottom branch, or is it, does the reformat node actually function? Let's find out. Maybe we need to. Maybe the reformat. Can the reformat actually do it? Let's find out. Let's try this. All right. We want it. We don't want it to be. We want it to be to the use the source ROD. We want it to fit the. We want it to fill. We want to. Just going to go back here. All right. So at the moment we have the cats. We can see our ROD is actually bigger than our entire project. So if we tell this over in at this point to fit the ROD, we wanted to scale it. Let's do scale. And we want to scale it one time. We see it fits the ROD. When we say tell it to scale one time, what it does is it automatically tries to fit or reformat to whatever our input source is. So our ROD, just so we understand, this merge node is only is displaying whatever our constant is with the image coming in from behind it, and then reformatting it. By reformatting it, what we're doing is we're seeing this ROD here. It's not showing the entire image. Well, reformat basically is reformatting our image. So what we're finding out here is that in fact, we cannot control it. So in order to fix this, we're going to actually have to change our project settings, which is unfortunate because I'd hoped we would be able to. We go here, we'll change it to vertical video. Now, if we do this, when we render this out, let's see if this works. Let's re-render it. All right, let's look at this. Let's let us reload this. And it says final read error decoding. What? Why is that a problem? Okay. Aha. So this is a problem because the read node didn't like it because it was different. So here we go, the read node, when we pull it in as a new read node, indeed, that fixed the problem. So as we can see, by changing it at the source level, so the question is can we do this? Can we make it so that the right node will write it based off of off of an input from an ROD? That's a very good question. I don't know anymore. I thought we could do this, I swear. And I'm really worried that this may be a thing. Oh, here we go. Aha, there it is. It's right there. Project format. Aha. Input format. Aha. So if we tell it the input format versus the project format, let's see if that fixes it. Let's hit S. All right, instead of vertical, let's set this back to HD, which is the project format. Go back here, we can tell it the input format. So the input format should be whatever's feeding into this. Well, we've reformatted it here. So this should change it to a 1920 by 1920 because of this reformat node, right? Or will it be, or let's find out. Let's first try re-rendering this. Let's delete that. Let's re-render it with this coming through just the merge node. This is going to be a real fun test. We re-render this 24 frames. It's just a test video anyway. All right, so the root is important only for setting up what you see in your viewer. It sets up the viewer node. It does not set up the output. The output, we obviously have to tell it the input format. Let's see if our input format is the same. Here we go. Let's see if that changed. And indeed, notice now it output exactly what we fed into it, which was the input to it. So what came into it is what dictated it versus the project. So that means that we can render it out, whatever we have, by just changing this to it. We could also set it to a fixed format where we define it ourselves. All right, let's see. One more time. Let's do one more thing. Set a fixed format. Let's do import format. And let's go back to this reformat node where we have it set up like this. and we go back and we re-render it, and we wind up with something that's 1920 by 1920 at the end, which will still be a horizontal kitty cat video. And then we'll go back and we'll talk about how to, I want to go over how we go about, well, let's talk about some other ways of doing this that don't involve a video. So there we go. And we can see, indeed, it looks exactly like what we had here, but at a different point in time, apparently. Why it was at a different point in time? Oh, because we're further ahead? Yes, we're way further ahead. There we go. All right. So there we go. We render it and we go and we can watch these kittens tackling one another and playing on the feet. All right. So there we go. So that's pretty much the gist of that. All right, how can we change this? If we let's look at something else. How could we make it so that if this reformat node is using scale right here? By the way, I just want to point something out, which is a bit odd. Is sometimes when you do this, the reformat node does not. Don't remember if it's with a solid or with a constant. If you wait, watch this. If we take all right, let's just for the moment make sure our settings are HD video. Good. Our source is HD. If we do a solid tab, solid. All right, and let's make our solid. Let's change our solids color to, I don't know. Let's change it to yellow. Whew, that's really bright. We set it to yellow, and because it's a coward, and then we hit T to transform it, and then we say we want to rotate it 90 degrees, or it doesn't matter in this case which way because we've done it. And we say, and we set it this way, and we take our reformat node, okay, and we plop on reformat node in here like so, and we tell it that we want for our reformat node that we wanted to use a scale of our input. And notice something weird that just happened. Notice that even though we started with this as a 1920 by 1080, and we rotated it, and then we reformatted it. When we reformatted it, we wound up with something that isn't actually 18 or 1080 by 1920. We wound up with something that is 1088 by 1928, which is not what we want, and really strange that it did this. But yeah, it's just a weird thing. So be careful if you decide, if you rotate and do it this particular way. It is not exactly the most reliable. What I recommend doing is if you're going to reformat using this. So why is this video important? Well, let's take our video. We take our original video and we transformed it. Let's actually transform it in this case -90, and then we reform. We go back here and we go back to bounding box, and then we go back and we go let's say to scale, right? And then we go, and it's going. We can see that it's still doing it to 18 or 1080 by 1922. Which is like, why is it doing 1082 by 1922? That doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. It's something weird. What the way to fix this is actually really quite simple. We take it after you've set it to scale. If you switch it over to bounding box, you will see that, and you keep for shape and use source ROD or source ROD. It will automatically fill out the box dimensions to whatever it was, and we can just set this back to 1080 by 1920. Now, I think for some reason it puts a buffer frame or a buffer around it. I don't know, but that's always how I've dealt with it. Probably actually the best thing to do is to just, once you've transformed it, let's just see if we've transformed it like so. now that I know that, or now that we know that by just transforming it and then going to, well, let's see, actually, has this fixed it? This is our input. We have an ROD here. We've transformed it. Has our ROD actually shifted? This is a good question, because our ROD, if we look, is not what our format is. The format here, we've got it set. We've got two different things. What's it going to do in this situation? Actually, I'm going to tell you, it's going to do an HD resolution, because it should do, well, I don't know. Actually, let's render it. Let's be positive of this. Let's render it out. Just do those 25 frames. Let's see if that is an exploration. All right, let's pull that in our test ROD. It should, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, it did what I thought it was going to do, which is it cropped it to the original source, because we haven't redefined the import format, or to the right node. So the transformation is just a transformation. It's not actually redefining the shape. We actually have to use a reformat node if we wanted to actually take on the new shape. And so in order to do that, obviously, when we do this, we go here, we tell it we've transformed it. Now we've told it to force it to the shape of 1080 by 1920. Let's just see something here. If we take it and we say input scale, and then we go back to box, is it still, yeah, it's still for some reason doing, let's see if that actually buggers out like that. Let's keep it like this. We're going to just render it out like this. Let's see. Let's remove that, because it for some reason corrupts in this version of Natron. I'm going to call that again a pre-release, or because this is a pre-release or an alpha beta build. I'm going to chalk it up to that. All right, so we're going to check that in. Let's see, is this new one 1080? Yep, it's 1082 by 1922, and it's scaled to fit, which means we're gonna get them. It's just the weirdest thing. Why, Natron? Why did you scale it up? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? Oh well. Anyway, I would tell it. I think the best thing to do is to honestly, we wanted to, we said fill. See, that's weird, because well, anyway. Fill or fit? Fit versus fill. Which one's which? Let's just try something here. If we say scale this up to 2 times, and then we reformat it, and we tell it to scale, that's odd that it didn't change it. Interesting. There we go. So 2162. So it's adding 2 pixels no matter what we do to it. So even though that we've technically scaled this up to 4K vertical video, we're still going up with 2 pixels on each side wider than it actually should be. Why? I don't know. It's one of those weird things. Set it back to here. Oh, look at that. It didn't. Interesting. When we told it to scale and we fit it, it's correct. Now that's interesting. Let's see. Let's do width, and let's say to box. There it goes. It did it that time when we told it to do width. We tell it to preserve the bounding box. No. Nope. So you're just going to have to, for example, in this situation, you'd have to change it. It's just some weird glitch. I don't know why it adds 2 pixels. I'm not positive if it does it in the older versions, but it does it in this particular beta. Hey, developers, know this. Oh, anyway, so it's not a huge deal. When you sit there and tell it, it will fit. It should, when we set it correctly, it will fit, and it will force this. It should force the shape down to. If we tell it to fit, it should fit exactly, or is it fill? See, it doesn't look like it's actually shifting it, so I don't even know why. Fit. Oh no, fit. puts it in correctly versus fill. Fill lets it, fill uses the original. Fit is what we want because it needs to be, it should be 1920 by 1080. So yeah, or well, we'll double that in this case. So yeah, tell it to fit if you want it to fit correctly. Let's see. Let's change this, because if it fits, yeah, by fitting it, we can see that it squishes it so that it keeps the proper proportions relative to whatever it was. So it didn't matter that we changed it, or well, we're telling it to fit. It's going to fit it based off of whichever one of the sides is the smallest size. It's going to fit it in. This is fill, which will fill it to basically fit the thing and crop off edges and so forth. So, but it shouldn't, well, that's weird. Anyway, we want it to fit. We want it to fit, and we should be setting it to the actual shape, which would be, let's see, 21 by 3840. That should be correct. This should fit it 1:1. And we should not get any lost pixels at all. Although, look at that. It looks like it is cropping off the edge. Very interesting. So maybe we want it to fill. That is very, very strange. All right, never mind, do fill. It should never have done that. That's, to me, that's a big, should never do. You should never rotate something and gain 2 pixels and then rotate, because if this is the case, if this is true, let's see what this means. This would mean, I just want to show you what the problem with this is. If we take this and we do another transform and we rotate this again 90 degrees, okay, and we look at it, and then we do a reformat, like so, and we say use the source ROD, and we say scale, and we set it, and then we set it to box. Yep, well, no, it's maintained it. That's, what are you doing, Natron? I can't even begin to guess why Natron added 2 pixels and then is retaining it. So for some reason, it has 2 pixels extra when we rotate it, but it only retains those 2 pixels extra. Unless, wait a minute, because we said that right. We want to say scale. There we go. If we just tell it to do scale, that's going to set it to 1080 by 1922. Wait a minute. We've got this right. All right, transform. We've got it 1. There we go. We scale it to fit 1 time. It's 1080 by 1922. We transform it back, which should be 19, which is weird that it's transforming it back like that, but whatever. That's besides the point. Let's reset our center point. And then we go over here and we say, instead of this, we say scale. And okay, now it did it. That's what I expected, which is every time we rotate this, we're gaining 2 pixels. That shouldn't happen. That's a bug. That's a really weird bug. So just make sure that you force it to scale back down to, or fit it to the format. So when we set to see, if we go back to the box and we say, well, let's do one more rotation. Let's rotate it back again. Copy, place it back, put it like so, and then go down to the bottom, which, whoops, didn't go. There we go. So now it's 26, which means every time we do this, we're just going to constantly shift back and forth and shape. I want to just check our reformat nodes. Make sure, oh wait, we want to do scale there. And then over here, we want it to do this one to scale as well. All right, so there. So if we go to box, we can, and we set it to box, that's okay. Oh, Natron. Oh, Natron. 1080 by 19. Oops, not 1082. 1080 by 1920. We're forcing the shape, and we want this to be forced. We're going to force it into there, and everything should fill. What is it? Fit. Let's see. Fit or fill? Fit, we lose 2 pixels in one of the dimensions, which is weird. So we're going to do fill, which should stretch it and make it fit correctly. There's some weird math going on, guys. Some weird math here. You guys shouldn't be losing pixels. Anyway, I think that pretty much covers the vast majority of it. So the important thing here that we're figuring out, or that we need to understand here, is why do we not want the ROD defining the output format by default? Well, the big reason is that if we did that, that would mean every time you did a transform, your output format would change, and then, you know, because an ROD is basically, it's just the bounding box for whatever you're working on, or whatever you've merged together and have cropped out of whatever you've merged together. In the case of something like this video here, let's look at our original video. Or not our original video, but this version of the video, which is, I believe, incorrect in size. I think this is the 1082 by 1920, which is weird. Let's just for the sake of this fix this. Let's reformat this correctly and output this just so that we can our last one is set up correctly so that it transforms. It should fit. Everything should be 1920 by 1080. We've got it, told it to box, we told it to fill versus fit, and it should basically have set it up correctly. We're going to go here, we tell it to input format, we're going to render it, so which will fix this in theory if it all worked correctly, because I want to work with it in vertical format, but we don't want to render the entire thing out. And after this is all over, for those who wish to see the cuteness of the kittens, I will play the full kitten video, just because, you know, I'm sure that people won't see it. So we'll, but we might have some problems with it. So anyway, let's go over here. So, all right, in this situation, let's fit it. All right, we're going to say this constant. We're not going to set this constant. We're going to set this constant to our original HD. All right, and when we take our A, so the problem is right now our bounding box, as we can see, is bigger than our output format, or what what we're rendering to, and so this creates this situation when if we want to if I put a transform node on this, you can see that the transform node is not the composite of the two, because it's happening before the merge. The merge, the reason I wanted to bring this up is because we can see that the bounding box after the merge is basically the combination of the two of these plus any space, but in perfect square format. In other words, we've got, it's taking the bigger of the two heights, which happens to be this video, and the bigger of the two widths, which happens to be this, and let's just change this to something like green so that we can actually see it, and then it merges the two like so. And we're okay. No, that was looking weird to me for a minute, but it's looking fine now that I'm seeing it. So we can see that, and so our actual ROD is bigger than our actual image when we're doing it here. But this transform node back before the merge is only applied to, is centered to its source, what came into it. Whereas if I do a transform over on this one, we'll see that it centers, it normally centers, because transforms by default center to whatever their input is. In fact, let's show this, because if we put a transform at the end of this, we can see that it's centered relative to the ROD, not the output format. notice that there's a difference. It did not center relative to the HD box. It centered relative to the ROD, which is the big square. So when that is important to realize. Transform nodes are designed to work this way. Why? Because we don't want them to be modifying our output, because we want to be able to do things like, for example, move this. I couldn't move this if this redefined the ROD, and we can see it's redefining the ROD. This creates a problem. Well, wait a minute. This actually raises a really interesting question. What happens if we do an animation where we do change the output format? That's an interesting thing. Let's push this back to its original. Let's undo, let's see. Let's zero this back out, 0, 0, so that it starts off back where it started, and it, for some reason, is not refreshing. There we go, there we go, there we go. It just didn't, Natron did not refresh the thing, or the output video. So let's go to this and take it, and we'll put a transformation. Let's set keys on all dimensions, and then over the course of 25 frames, we're going to, whoa, what happened here? That's weird. On the 25th frame. Oh, 24th. Whoa, no. That's weird. How many frames is this? Whatever. I'm not going to worry about it. I think that has to do with the fact we rendered it as a JPEG. Oh, as an MPEG. But this does mean that we can't use their output. We're going to have to give it a new output format. So, because otherwise... All right. Well, anyway... let's say I'm frame 23 because it's getting there. Frame 23, let's transform this or modify our position so that this is now down here, like so. All right, so now we have a new ROD, a new output format. Well, what happens if we put a reformat node in here and tell the reformat node that we wanted to just keep the scale? That should be interesting. Let's see what happens here. Does the ROD, so interesting. So the ROD follows it along. It doesn't actually scale. We can see, or it's not scaling. It's basically just following the two along. So it creates that's actually a very interesting cheat to make a much more complex animation than we would have had. That could be very interesting to use. Of course, this isn't as useful as one might hope. Actually, wait a minute. No, at the end, we actually, because we made it bigger, here's the interesting thing. At the end, when we get up to the end, we actually pass by the original initial size. And what we're seeing is that in the ROD, what's happened is it actually cropped it to what the starting resolution was. So what it does is it crops it to the initial resolution and then maintains that, whatever the initial resolution that it starts rendering out to, becomes the output format. So, and anything that exceeds those bounds gets cropped off. That's what I was wondering about, is what happens if it exceeds it? And we can see that right here. So that goes to show what happens. Maybe if we do this, what happens if we take this off here and then go in like this? Nope. It basically it must look back through time and look at the very first frame in the entire sequence and then set it up there. Well, that raises the question, what happens if at the very first frame we were to change the output format? Would this, or change the position? So let's go back to frame 0 and let's change this position to something other than 0, 0. Let's set it to -60 by 10. Now, when we go over here, it's different. So when we go down here and then over here, it looks like interesting. All right, let's see. Is it really doing that? Oh no! All right, so we disconnect it and reconnected it, and you can see that it did indeed. It changed the output format based off of the first frame. So if we go over here, let's disconnect it and reconnect it. Is it Yeah, it's sticking to the it, so it finds the first, looks at the first frame, and that defines the actual resolution for the reformat node. So what this means is that whatever the first frame of your transform sequence is going to be your output format. So in this case, we set it to 1981 by 1931. So it's not 1920 by 1920 anymore, which is interesting, very interesting. Actually, wait a minute, that doesn't make, no, it does make sense. Okay, both of them, yes, that's fine. It's all good. We're all good here. All right. So I think we've done enough exploration. This has done enough and hopefully explained enough about this, and we all understand a bit more about it and answered a bunch of explored like ways of transforming these nodes in ways or learned about, you know, how to deal with exporting vertical video in a more efficient fashion. It's actually a lot easier than you think, except for the fact that you've got to you've got to modify that weird bug. And by the way, if people are not using this, gosh, I forget what they call the stupid builds. Forgot about snapshots. This is a snapshot build. It's a pre-release. The 4.1 snapshots are what I'm using. It's basically a beta or an alpha, depending on where it's at, where the features are at. But I can't guarantee that the official, the solid version is going to work like this. I was very interested in playing with like some of the new features that this has way back when, and I still haven't fixed it. And I didn't have the old version because it overrode. Talked about that in the previous video. So, right. It's right. Thanks for watching. Keep on Natroning.